Please subscribe, like, and share. It really helps us out. And of course, if you have any questions, comment below and we will answer you as soon as we can. Welcome to this video in our series on A-level economics. Today we are looking at 3.4, Market Structures Part 4. More specifically, monopsony and contestability. If you haven't seen our previous videos, click on the card above.
Okay, starting out today with monopsony. Firstly, what are the characteristics and conditions of a monopsony? This is where there is only one buyer in the market, and other than this it has the same basic characteristics as monopoly. They can prevent new firms entering the market and aim to profit maximize. In real life, pure monopsonies rarely exist, but many firms experience monopsony power when they buy a large percentage of the market. One example could be the NHS, who pay less for cancer drugs than a number of other high-income countries. Moreover, food retailers have power when purchasing supplies from farmers. Farmers can either sell them all their goods at a low price or risk not selling them at all. They will pay their suppliers the lowest price possible to minimize their costs and make the most of their position as the only buyer. This will enable them to maximize their profit. The value of the goods they buy will depend on how much money they can make with these goods, and this is determined by the demand curve of the goods they make and sell. They will produce where the cost to them, or marginal cost, is equal to the value they get, or average revenue. Hence, they will produce where marginal cost equals demand. The supply curve for the firm is the supply curve for the market, so will be upward sloping. This means the marginal cost curve is above the supply curve, since it costs more to pay for the last good than the average cost of all the goods, as cost rises with output. If the market was competitive, they would produce where supply is equal to demand, at Q2P2. However, in a monopsony, the firm will decide to produce where marginal cost equals average revenue at Q2P2.
So, what are the costs and benefits? Firstly, firms. The monopsony gains higher profits by being able to buy at lower prices. This increases the funding for research and development and leads to more return for shareholders. They achieve purchasing economies of scale, which will lower costs and increase profits. The NHS is a monopsonist buyer of pharmaceuticals, and this leads to significantly lower prices. As a result, they can invest more and pay for more treatments. Secondly, consumers. Customers may gain from lower prices as reduced costs are passed on. It could lead to a fall in supply, since the business buys fewer inputs. The extent to which supply to customers will fall will depend on the price elasticity of supply in the market of which the monopsonist is a buyer. If it is inelastic, there will be little fall in supply. They may act as a counterweight to monopolists. There may be a fall in quality as prices are driven down. Thirdly, employees. The supplier will sell less goods and so employ less people, whilst the monopsonist may employ fewer, more or the same amount of people since they have less inputs to use for production, but their costs are also lower. Monopsonists may pay higher wages as they are making higher profits. Lastly, suppliers. Suppliers will lose out as they will receive lower prices, less will be supplied, leading to some firms leaving the market.
That brings us to contestability. This model is concerned with the possibility of other firms entering the market if they see the opportunity to make money, rather than the number of firms in the industry at a point in time. A contestable market is one with a high threat of new entrants, which keeps firms producing at a competitive level. Even in a monopoly, a firm may be forced to be efficient due to the potential of new entrants to the market. Any attempt to make a huge profit will mean other businesses will be attracted to the industry. So, what are the characteristics of contestable markets? Within a contestable market there is perfect knowledge, so if one firm is making abnormal profits, other firms will enter the market. There is freedom of entry and exit, meaning any firms can enter or leave the market. There will be a relative absence of sunk costs. Firms will be able to and have the legal right to use the best available technology, meaning their average cost curve will be the same as the original firms. There will be low product loyalty, meaning people don't consistently use one brand and are happy to switch if a new one enters the market. We assume firms are short-run profit maximizers and do not collude with each other. Some examples of contestable markets are the taxi industry, with the introduction of Uber, the hotel market, with Airbnb, and fast food, due to Five Guys. Another example of contestability is Ocado, who are set to replace M&S in the FTSE 100 in 2018, showing the new replacing the old.
So, what are the implications? In a contestable market, firms will enter the market if they see other firms are making huge profits. They will remain in the market until competition prevents them from making a profit. This will take away profit from the original firms, and could even force them out of business. The only way to prevent this is by using limit pricing, which reduces the incentive for firms to enter the market. In a perfectly contestable market, firms will only be able to make normal profits and produce where average cost equals average revenue, because new firms will enter the market if prices were any higher and they were making monopoly profits. Firms are likely to be productive and allocative efficient. If they are not producing at the lowest point on their average cost curve, where they are not productively efficient, new firms can enter the market and undercut them by offering lower prices. Due to this, and the fact they can only make normal profits in the long run, they must also be allocative efficient. Since they can only make normal profits, where average cost equal average revenue, and since they produce at the lowest point on their average cost curve where average cost equals marginal costs. Therefore, average cost equals marginal cost, which equals average revenue, so the value to society is equal to the cost.
What are the types of barriers to entry and exit? Some barriers are natural barriers, sometimes called innocent entry barriers. These include natural monopolies and high entry or sunk costs. However, others are put in place by existing firms in the industry. They include patents and copyrights as well as high levels of advertising and branding. Both the costs to entry and exit must be high for the market to have low contestability, since if entry costs are high but the firm is able to make profit once in business, and not lose much of this profit if they leave, then the market is still contestable. Legal barriers can prevent new firms from entering an industry. Laws are put in place which make it more difficult for firms to enter the market, or explicitly mean they cannot enter. For example, patents and exclusive rights to production, such as with televisions, mean other firms cannot enter the market. Some industries, such as the taxi industry, gain market licenses to operate. Other firms can put up marketing barriers. High levels of advertising build up consumer loyalty, so demand becomes more price inelastic and consumers are less likely to try other brands. Sometimes a brand can become associated with a product, such as Hoover with vacuum cleaners. New firms entering the industry are unlikely to have the funds to undertake large-scale advertising, so struggle to compete with the incumbent firms. This may also be a barrier to exit, since losing a brand and consumer loyalty will be a cost of leaving the market. The pricing decisions of incumbent firms can be a barrier to entry. Predatory pricing means prices are so low that firms are driven out of the market, and so it would be extremely difficult for new firms to enter. Limit pricing discourages the entry of other firms as prices are set at a level to prevent new entrants. Some firms might employ anti-competitive practices, such as refusing to supply retailers which stock competitors. Some industries have high capital startup costs, for example buying the machinery necessary to begin production. Sunk costs may also be high. Economies of scale mean that new firms are unable to produce on the same average cost curve as large, incumbent firms. If they were to enter the industry, their costs would be higher and so prices would be higher and they would be unable to compete. Barriers to exit prevent firms from leaving a market quickly and cheaply. They include the cost to write off assets, pay leases and make workers redundant.
So, how do sunk costs affect the degree of contestability? A sunk cost is a fixed cost that a business cannot recover if it leaves the industry. It includes property, if the lease is longer than it is actually used, for machinery and equipment that cannot be resold, and advertising. All businesses will face sunk costs because even if things are resold, it is generally for a lower price. The degree of contestability is measured by the extent to which the gains from market entry for a firm exceed the costs of entering a market. A market with no sunk costs and no barriers to entry and exit is a perfectly contestable market. The more contestable a market, the more unstable it will be, as there can be regular hit and run competition. In reality, no market is likely to be perfectly contestable, as there is always likely to be some sunk cost. What are the reasons for increasing contestability? The recession has meant that entrepreneurs do not accept the existing market structure as fixed. For example, Aldi changed the structure of supermarkets by offering much lower prices and increasing market share. The deregulation of markets has allowed a reduction of some barriers to entry in some industries, such as telecommunications and postal services. Moreover, competition policy has meant firms can no longer use predatory pricing and cartels, so markets are more contestable. The European single market has opened up new markets for firms, and so these firms can enter into the market, making them contestable. Globalization in general has increased contestability, since foreign firms can enter domestic markets. This is a synoptic point. Changes in technology has reduced entry costs as capital is more mobile. The rise of internet shopping means that firms no longer have to find retailers for their products, and so can easily enter the market and sell their goods online. In order to test the theory, we would need a lot of information about the cost structure of the business. Since the theory centers on the threat of entry and not necessarily entry itself, it is difficult to test. Even if there has not been new competition over time, this does not necessarily mean the firm isn't contestable. New firms entering the industry and low profits being made suggests that an industry is contestable. Thank you for watching our video. Please like, subscribe and share. And comment below so we can clarify things for you.